Hello everyone and welcome to this live stream special. I am joined here today and we're gonna learn something. So pay attention because these lessons could cost you a lot of time, energy, a small fortune. Thinking of setting up that architecture practice? Well, what better way to learn than someone who's done it before? An award-winning architecture practice. They made the mistake potentially of hiring me a while ago, but we keep in contact still, and it's gone on to great things after I've left as well. Another reason, probably, why you shouldn't have hired me. I'm joking, but it's the fantastic Oliver Lowrie from Ackroyd Lowrie. Oliver, how are you?
Very good, thank you. I realised I haven't put my surname on the little thing now, but anyway, it's too late now. It's happening.
It's all right. It's Oliver Lowrie at Ackroyd Lowrie. We can see it there. Now, while I know you, and I was joking around a little bit there, in case someone in the audience, first of all, has not met you before, might not have heard of Ackroyd Lowrie, maybe just give us a quick rundown of who you are and who's Ackroyd Lowrie.
Thanks. Well, I'm me, but so Ackroyd Lowrie is the company that me and John, my business partner, set up 10 years ago this year.
Ooh, well done.
Yeah, I know. It's making me feel old. We used to work, we met when we were at Archetype, who are a pioneer of sustainability. And I worked there for 10 years, met John there. We had many a lovely hour designing passive house details and very sustainably sourced skirting boards. And I have nothing but respect for Archetype. But after 10 years, we thought, right, we want to do things a little bit differently, and we want to focus on taking a lot of that sustainable knowledge and applying it to like a city scale context. So we set up with the ambition with our 10-year plan to work on city scale projects. We want to build a company that designs the cities of the future. And then we started off and done people's house extensions for a bit, but everyone's got to do that. So that was, the first year or so, we were doing small scale projects, but we always had that vision of wanting to grow and make impactful city scale projects. And I'll come on to this, but one of the crucial things that we did was pay for advice. Actually, I think I might have forgotten to put that on my list.
It's the bonus one before we begin.
The bonus one. So after about 2 years, we actually hired a non-exec, which seemed very expensive to us at the time, but he gave us some incredible advice, amongst which was, if you don't want to work on house extension projects, take them off your website, which we did. And the other thing that he said was, we were telling him that we wanted to grow our revenue by 20% that year, which we thought was quite ambitious. And he said, guys, what would you think if I just told you that you should double your revenue in 12 months? And we were like, well, that seems like quite an easy thing to say. And he was like, well, just think about it. And we went away, and a month later came back for that next board meeting and had put in place a plan to double our revenue. And there are factors that you can't control, like the economy around you, but at that time the economy was okay, and we put in place a plan that did allow us to double our company in that 12-month period, and then we've doubled it again since. So we now have around 25 people. We have our beautiful office here in this warehouse in East London, and we did once hire a man called Stephen Drew.
yeah, and I enjoyed my time there, and it was a good social life, and I did get some work done. So
you helped us double again. So you helped us when we hired you. We were probably around 15 people, and we hired Stephen in the height of COVID because we couldn't get people in the door fast enough to satisfy all of the projects that we were taking on. And so Stephen, I think you roughly hired like one person a month for 12 months.
Well, I'm very grateful because I was lost in the shore just setting up my business as well. So this is good. So actually, even these 10 lessons that we're going to go into, I can still learn from them because I am currently at 4 people. I know it's a slightly different business, but some of these concepts still apply. So let's just wind back to that because you mentioned you and John were in the pub. You had that thing of we're going to do this, bestie mates, gonna conquer the world, and then reality's kicked in, right? You've done some amazing stuff, but it's hard. Running a business is hard. So we're gonna focus on those 10 lessons because I think they're really, really useful. So if you're happy with it, Ollie, I'm gonna bring up number 1 and we can go through it. If that's
I've tried
right.
to do them roughly so they work kind of chronologically. Although I've now given it away by telling the story already, but
now it's fine. Come on, let's just go for it. So number 1 is jump, but make sure you were tied on. What does that mean?
Well, I think if you want to start a business, you've got to start a business, right? At some point you have to jump, but
Yeah.
so the way that we started, we did have some security around that jump. So John and I had already done a bit of private work together before we set up the company, and one of those projects had gone into becoming like a real project with one
Yeah.
real client with real fees. And so by the time that we actually decided to set up the company, we already had a client there waiting for us.
Yeah.
So it made that jump a little bit safer. And, one client and one project is not enough to, build a company and run a company, but it is a good start. It
Yeah.
means you can pay your rent, and it allowed us to buy our first printer and our first laptop because we could forecast those fees. And the other thing was that I didn't leave initially. So I was working, John, we both started part-time, then John went full-time and I was still at Archetype. And then, so it was a gradual transition as we, basically when we got our second project, that's when I came over as well.
Fair enough.
So, that's the thing. I think everybody that feels like they want to do it should do it, do jump. But, try and put a little bit of security around that, work out where you think you might get clients from. Ideally try and, secure one at the same time as jump.
Makes complete sense. Now, I know the Ackroyd Lowrie history as well because I've been there and I've heard and I've seen the cool presentation. Also, a quick interlude. The first place that you got an office, though, was above a pub, Ollie. Now,
No, it was in the pub.
It was in the pub.
Well, our friend owned the Three Compasses at the top of Ridley Road Market in Dalston. Yeah. And during the day, there weren't many people in there. So we used that as our office. Fantastic. And we signed our first client for like a genuinely quite big project in that pub.
Fair enough. Okay.
He just thought we'd gone to the pub for a drink. He didn't know that it was actually our office as well.
Yeah, you're like, the name's on the wall. They're like, what? I thought we just having a pint. But there you go. I think that's brilliant. Maybe that wasn't a mistake then. We'll see. But anyways, I'll move on to number 2, where you said it's not about you, it's about them when you're talking about the client. What do you mean by that?
So I think that architects, and look, I've made the mistake of doing this. You get in front of a client and you talk about your process. You talk about how you design. You go, look, the way we do it, there's all those other people, they're doing it wrong. We're doing it like this. I've got these guys in the office and we use BIM and like design process thinking or sketching. Like clients don't give a shit about, oh, sorry, we're in the daytime. So
it's all right. My Bill Gates, Microsoft, I'm sorry. Don't worry. We'll keep going.
What do they care about? They care about what's in it for them. They want to work with you because they want that outcome. They haven't come to an architect because they want a friend, a companion. They've come because they want something to do with property. And it's this, it's the same thing. You don't go to if you were in a high stakes court claim situation, either as the defendant or as the claimant, you're not going to go to the lawyer because of their process. You go to the lawyer because they're going to win. You want the outcome. And I think that architects, when you're selling, you need to listen. Like listening is the key skill to selling. You've got to listen to what it is that your client is saying about the outcome that they want, and then gear your sales pitch towards that outcome, not about you. It doesn't matter about you. You could be whatever. You could do it standing up backwards with your head turned around the wrong way around, as long as you get them the outcome that they're after. And I think that's the most important thing, when it comes to sales, is to articulate to them back the outcome that they desire.
Fair enough. I always think of it's like spewing information in the sales pitch, isn't it? We do their stats. You're right. It should be about the person trying to find out about that stuff. Now, the third point that you mentioned is assuming that your design skills will be discovered by potential new clients rather than delivering high value content to potential customers that demonstrates these skills. It's a bit like, I built a website. Where the heck are the customers? I'm guessing that's what you mean, but I might be wrong. What do you mean?
Or
by
even one back from that. Even like I think architects think again that, or a criticism of architects would be to think that because they're very good designers, people will naturally find that out about them.
Yeah.
And, even building a website is part of what I'm saying. That is, in some ways, it's content, right? But really what I'm getting at is the sort of ecosystem, which I think might be my next point. Yeah. You need to create an ecosystem of products around you where clients will get to learn about you. And you have to be proactive about that. They won't just discover that you're good at designing because you're good at designing. So, and it's actually quite hard to go out and tell people, hey, I'm good at design.
Yeah.
So for us, what we've done is we've built an ecosystem of products around us, which are all free for our clients. So we've got our podcast, which is Urban Forecast, where people, and you have your podcast, it's the same thing. People for free can discover what my views are, what John's views are, how we think about the world. It's free for the client to learn that, but at the same time, they are learning about my values without me having to ram down their throat, what I think. So that means that they're already kind of warmed up. We run an event series called the Breakfast Club Briefings, and that's high value content because we try and get incredible speakers who will attract to those events planners from across London and across the UK, politicians sometimes. And so our clients, who are largely in the property sector, developers and stuff, will get to have, a roundtable meeting and it's all Chatham House. So, whatever happens in that room can't be spoken about afterwards.
Yeah.
And people get to have dialogue. That's a high value product for a client if they are, able to have these discussions about, the future of cities with key decision makers. And we offer that to our clients for free. So we pay for the cost of that event. And what that does is it demonstrates, when we're in the room, we will discuss with people what we think are our values around the future of cities. So again, clients are learning without me having to ram down or John having to ram down their throats what the values of Ackroyd Lowrie are. And that is a more subtle way to sell is for, to build this ecosystem of products where people will be able to learn about you and move them towards that position where they're ready to work with you. And the next point, the funnel, the ecosystem of products, it goes, there's still more free stuff to give away, sadly, I think. Within the funnel, you've got a podcast which you're paying for to give away free content. Then you've got, for us, the Breakfast Club events where we're paying to give away free content that's quite high value. And then the next bit of the touch point for the client, sadly, is usually to do an exercise where they will go, I've got this site. And that's the eureka moment for us because, they're not still yet parting with cash because we will often look at that site for free, but they are moving down the funnel towards becoming a client. And I'm sure it's the same for you, Stephen. You've got your podcast as the first touch point, then you might take somebody for lunch because you want to build a relationship with them. And then you might go, actually, guys, I've got a few candidates here, why don't you take a look at them? And you're still not at the point where anybody's paying for anything. You're still, but that is the beauty and the pain of marketing is that you're paying quite a lot to give away stuff for free to clients. But it does eventually pay off if it can be done right.
Yeah, I think that's really true. And I think an important distinction there, you're not saying you do charge for certain products and you're not cutting those down. You're talking about free vehicles, free products, which lead then to a client paying a fair fee for the work that is entailed in that.
Yeah,
right?
So I think, you've actually copied the whole thing. The Daniel Priestley, that was really only a note for myself. But anyway, Daniel Priestley is a master of explaining the product ecosystem. Some of those products are free, but ultimately the service that you provide is a product that is not free. So as you might do a free capacity study for a site, but what you're trying to get out of that is the client to decide to go with you for a pre-application, a planning application, and then on to technical design. And all of those things are our core services, which are that's the thing we charge for. And the revenue from that has to be able to pay for the marketing system to attract the next round of clients into the funnel. So it was explained to me by actually the guy from the Business of Architecture, the monkey's fist. Where's the American one? On his podcast, he explained it. The monkey's fist sounds disgusting, but it was
it does,
a thing from when people used to sail massive ships around the world, which I suppose they still do, so maybe they still exist.
Yeah.
You've got a massive chain that needs to tie the boat up to the dock side, but you can't throw the massive chain. So what you have to do is you get this ball of rope, and it's got a little weight on it, and it's like string with a stone on the end, and the stone's called the monkey's fist. You throw the stone to somebody that's standing on the shore, and they pull the string. So they catch the stone, they pull the string, and the string's attached to a rope. Then you pull the rope. The rope's attached to the chain. You pull the chain, and then you pull the boat in. And so the monkey's fist is like all this stuff. First, you've got to chuck out a pebble that's a podcast, and then you somebody will you reel them in via these other ecosystem of products. But along the way, they're learning more and more about you, and they're working out whether they want to work with you based on you being able to talk about your values, what you represent, and the outcomes that the client might achieve by working with you.
Yeah, no, really, and thank you for fleshing that out. I agree, the monkey's fist sounds gross, but actually a lot of that stuff in marketing, even I apply for, and ironically, sometimes giving something away for free and initially not even asking for a return can mean you can get to the actual the assignment and charge a decent fee for it, because suddenly you're like, well, we do all this stuff and that's why we're X fee. So no, I really, really agree. And thank you for sharing that. The next one I've had problems with, Ollie, when I've started my business, where especially at the start, you all want to say yes to everything. And there is a power to no's. It's hard though, saying no. And here you say, saying yes to design programs that you know are unachievable.
Yeah, so it's the easiest mistake to make. It's really hard at the start of a project to tell people something they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
And often, particularly at the moment, like I've got a lot of sympathy for planners because I think they have a tough job and they work really hard, but they're totally overstretched because they're not funded properly or the departments aren't funded properly. So as a result, pre-application processes are taking a lot longer. Clients don't necessarily, you don't really want to, you've got your site, you've borrowed some money to buy it, clock's ticking. You don't want the whole design team to turn around and go, look, guys, realistically, it's going to take us 18 months to 2 years to get planning here. Because nobody wants to hear that. You want to be like, right, okay, 6 months and we'll get the planning application in, then a 3-month determination, yes. And everyone goes, yeah. It's like at that point, you don't want to think about the worst case scenario. That is the timescales that should work. But often those programs are hard to achieve, and it's out of your control as a design team. It's the local authority aren't able to keep up with that program. And so the problem with that is that as it drags out, your fees get stretched out thinner and thinner and thinner.
Yeah.
And so, that is why the lesson learned is that it is better to be, to try and be realistic as a team view at the start and say, look, we actually think this is going to be a little bit longer, and either we need to draw down the fee in a slightly different way, or potentially even have a higher fee because we know that the project is going to take longer and they might have to go around the planning system more. So that is definitely a learning that then relates to the next point, because I think if if everybody says, if you sign up, if you think your fees are going to come very quickly on programs that aren't met, you will hire on the basis of that.
Yeah.
And so, as everything then slows down, there's a potential that you've potentially overhired because you're like, yes, everything's going to come in as this, as predicted, but nothing ever works out as predicted. And so I think, hiring as fast as you can to meet particular programs can then, it can have a negative effect if those programs stretch out because you suddenly may have too many people. I'm not sure that I've ever been in a situation where we've had too many people to do the work, but certainly as compared to your revenue, it is possible that you could have overhired. So those two are linked. And then the next point is also linked, which is that, we've sort of mentioned that, but then if you need to extend, if that program extends and there's not fees there, that can be a difficult conversation. So it is better to be difficult at the start than it is once you're 8 months into the process. You aren't yet at the end, and there's no fee to cover the resource that you need at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that's where a lot of problems happen as well when there's not enough fees, isn't it? That's where overtime can happen. That's where staff frustrations can happen. It just becomes a world of pain, right? I know in Ackroyd Lowrie, you actually pay overtime, which is quite rare, and you have strong opinions around this mark. Do you think that it's attached to fees? And tell me why you've done that in Ackroyd Lowrie as well.
So yeah, I think it's related to this point. I think there's two reasons that we pay overtime. One, we think that there's a tendency for the architectural profession to sort of undervalue itself, and we think that by paying everybody for every hour that they work, we get a truer reflection of what the real costs are to the client. Because essentially, if you don't pay your staff whilst they're working on, say, a planning application for a client, and they're doing loads of overtime, you're robbing your employee to pay your client, because actually the company, aren't the beneficiary of that additional work. It's the client. They're getting whatever. Say you do 20% of overtime, you don't pay the staff for it, you don't charge the client for it. Who gets the free work? It's the client. It's not us as the architect. So we wanted a truer reflection of what the real costs are. It relates back to the point that I made previously. If you really want to understand how these programs work, how the time works, you have to account for every hour that's worked. So the best way to account for that time is to say to people, right, you're paid for all of your hours, because then your timesheets become super accurate, because everybody does want to claim, if they're going to get paid for it, of course they're going to put it down. So, and that then comes on to the second reason why we do it, is that we want to have a really strong data set, because that allows us to predict future fees more accurately, and also run the business more accurately. If we know what the real costs are, then, and we have really strong data, and we know those timesheets are reliable because everybody wants to put in the time, because they're kind of incentivized to by being paid for it, then we have data sets that are accurate, that allow us to make really important decisions going forward.
Makes complete sense. It's hard though when you're in the mix of stuff like this, isn't it? And when you got pressure of things like costs, you got all this stuff, and you just want to sign that big project because you just know it's going to be big. However, if the fee's not there, maybe it is not worth it. And on that theme of money, what I was going to say is cash flow, Oliver. Cash flow. That's the one that I'm always like, cash flow is king or queen, but cash flow can kill a business. And I found it in the last 12 months particularly difficult at key points where you know something's coming, but you still got to pay your staff on time. You still got those bills. Why is it such an important lesson, do you think, cash flow?
Well, it's really easy to look at your revenue and go, okay, cool, we've got, say, whatever your fees are coming in, we've got a certain amount of fee coming in, and then we've got a certain amount of cost to our team. And like, ideally that, there's a ratio of what that should be. So it's hard enough doing that, to be honest, just balancing up, making sure, looking ahead, going, okay, have we got, whatever it is, certain amount of £1,000 coming in this month in terms of fee invoices going out, and have we got, on the other hand, the right amount of staff to deliver that work? That is already hard, but the money doesn't come in like that. That's just when you send the invoice out. So your balancing act is being done between invoices, which are, they don't instantly generate cash. They just do something to, there are a number on your balance sheet. But if the person then chooses not to pay that for months, as you say, the staff costs go out, because the staff costs go out at the same time every month, but the money coming in comes in a much more unpredictable way. And it's the bane of every architect's existence, and many services companies, and you're paid by architects. So, you're possibly even further down the ruinous food chain of payment in the industry.
Yeah, I've experienced it. The prompt payers and the whole, we're not going to get paid till December, so we'll pay you after then. And you're like, we can't wait. So I've had a flavor of it, but cash flow, I do think, is key.
So I think, here's my thing. I think that the RIBA need to do a lot more about this. I think somebody needs to run for the next RIBA presidency, advocating for small businesses, advocating for some mechanisms to alleviate the endemic problem of slow and not, the either slow payment or not payment at all, that happens in the construction industry to service providers. It's crippling. It stifles growth, and there are plenty of simple mechanisms that could be put in place to improve it. Yeah. One thing, it's just a simple thing like when you rent a flat, you put your money into a deposit scheme. Why don't clients do that? Why doesn't Reba set up something like that so that the first invoice going out, it's on day one, so you get 20% of the overall fee gets put into a little safety deposit box because it demonstrates that the client can pay. You can then keep, so that happens on day one, and there's a little security blanket that means that if things are going slow and the client is like, well, I haven't got the money, blah blah blah, you can go, okay, that's fine, we'll just access the safety deposit box. You can replenish it when you get your money back in. So something like that doesn't seem impossible to do. And then the other thing on a sort of similar theme is that the RIBA seem to be very good at telling architects what their liabilities and obligations are. And I spent another evening last night reading about the new Building Safety Act. We're doing weekly seminars on it at the moment. And it is a very comprehensive document issued by the RIBA about all of our new responsibilities, on top of quite onerous responsibilities that we already had as architects. What I find it harder to access is educational information on the RIBA's website, telling clients what they should be paying architects. I think that, the days of Reba setting fees are long gone, but there should be some educational advice available to clients on the website saying, okay, look, if you're doing a house extension and you want to spend £200,000 on a house extension, expect to pay your architect something like this for planning, something like this for technical, something like this for construction. Just educational material. I'm not saying Reba needs to be setting fees. If you're, Reba should be talking to developers and going, guys, Building Safety Act is a big deal. You will need to be paying your architects potentially more. Your principal designers will definitely need to be paid. It's not a service that you can just wrap into the existing architectural service. It's, again, not setting fees, but just educating clients around, there's always somebody that's willing to do it less. You can have a race to the bottom. But if you do that, your architect may not be able to resource the project properly. They might think they can, but there might emerge gaps. And with this new regime of Building Safety Act, might that not be a detrimental thing? Outcome, would it not be better to sort of have a minimum fee that for the scale of project you would not pay below? And again, I don't think it should be set by Reba, but there should be some client educational material there, so that we can end, what is a pretty cutthroat race to the bottom.
Yeah, no, well said. I do think you should think about that sentence, what you said about maybe someone should do it. Maybe not this time, but next time. He's looking at you, Oliver.
I'm not a member of the RIBA, so I couldn't run.
Not now, but you can sign up. So. But I agree with the sentiment. It's I've been hearing about the principal designer thing you're talking about. Architects get a hard enough time it is, talk about fire regulations, it's a nightmare, let alone everything else. However, we'll move on to your next point because it's quite interesting where you talk about grow slow, hire fast, fire fast, first hire slow, hire like you're selling. What do you mean by that, Oliver?
So those are
you're gonna say private note.
Those are no. Those are, if you could put it back up again. So we've grown fast a couple of times. I think it's very easy to say yes to things. And we've, when you were working with us, we were just recruiting so fast. I think that, my lesson from having grown very fast is that if I were to do it again, I would have probably turned down some of the work that was more challenging and just grown a little bit slower. It seems like a hard thing to do at the time, but if you've already got some revenue, you don't need to hire to meet new revenue. That was sort of one of my really key lessons. So I think that's something that I will keep in mind for myself, but it's advice that I give to others is it's possible just to add one person to the team instead of three and turn down that job that seems actually like it might not quite work out the way you anticipate. On that same point, hire fast versus hire slow. So one of our early clients was like, look, hiring's really easy. You just hire loads of people and then just fire the ones you don't like. That was his advice. I think, we've tried hiring in different ways. I would say that hiring slow is better. And that's, so working with a recruiter and trying to get people that are aligned with your values. But I think it's really important that you don't hire don't hire copies of yourself. So I think, it's good to have shared values, but definitely not shared backgrounds. You don't want to have a monolithic sort of workforce. So I think that balance between trying to get people that get you, but aren't little mini yous, is really important. So always trying to get the best talent from as many possible places that you can. And so that's why, we've spent a lot of time over the past few years setting up the AL Academy, which is our sort of youth engagement. It's modelled on Sir Alex Ferguson's Man United Academy, but without a lot of the money or glitz or glamour of the Premiership football. So we go out into schools. We partner with the New City College, who've got schools all over East London. We go out and we pitch to 14-year-olds for why architecture is a cool career. And architecture gets a lot of shit for having low wages and stuff, but the average salary in Tower Hamlets is, the mean salary I think is in the 30s, 30,000. And what we can say is that we are able, as in our practice, to pay people always above the London living wage. And if people we're talking to kids at like 14, 15, when they're 16, 17, they can come into the office 2 days a week if they're doing the BTEC, and they will qualify with 120 UCAS points and the BTEC in construction of the built environment. And we're able to partner with the school to actually provide that educational outcome, and that those UCAS points are enough to either go into full-time education at university, or they can come back and they can work with us on a Part 1 apprenticeship scheme, which can then lead on to doing the Part 2 apprenticeship scheme. Actually, it's Part 2 and Part 3. So over 10 years, we could end-to-end take somebody from being unqualified to a fully qualified architect without them ever having to pay a penny.
Wow.
And they would actually get paid for everything after the first 2 years. The first 2 years, they're still school age, so they don't get paid for that, because you don't get paid to go to school. But everything after that will be paid apprenticeship wages. And that's really exciting, because it is allowing us to have a diversity of thought. These kids are from Tower Hamlets and Hackney, and these are places where there's not a lot of people going into schools and telling them that architecture is a career path. So it's been really fantastic working with these kids. We had Ben Flatman from the BD come into the office last week, and he did some interviews with some of them. And it was so sweet. They were saying, I always had this dream that I wanted to be an architect, but and then my mum just said, well, if you want to do that, why don't you just do that? And now I get to do it, and I come here every day, and I come to Ackroyd Lowrie, and I walk out with a smile on my face, and makes me feel good about it. But that's the last thing to say is highlight your selling. If you want the best people, don't expect them to come to you. You've got to do the same thing. You've got to go out there and find them. You've got to go out, create an ecosystem so that you're attracting the best talent, and then pitch to them. And that's working with you, Stephen. That was you were part of our ecosystem. We had Architecture Social, podcasts, etc. This this is an example of another. This is a product of, this is me saying to young candidates, please apply to us. When we're hiring, we want the best talent. We want to come and pitch to you that you will have a place here. Yes, then number 10, it's all about the team. Values, not monolithic. I've already done these, haven't I? Shit. Okay, well, there we go.
No, that's why I just put it in the background. But that was good. No, it's really, really useful. And I think I just wanted to build upon one point you mentioned about getting that stuff out there and bringing inbound talent. That's a really good idea, especially because the market shifts. After the pandemic, it was all about companies like yourself, Oliver, saying, I've got a role here and there, when there were lots of people looking for jobs. But right now, someone who's very good, they get a choice of where they want to go, and they're going to look for all that stuff like the academy. They're going to go through the company culture. They're going to look at stuff like paying overtime and work out where they want to go. So getting all that stuff in place for when you need it is really important. And then over time, good people are coming to you. But to your point, which you mentioned here, if you can build people up in the ranks, a bit like your Alice Ferguson, Youth Academy.
Alice? Analogy. Who's Alice Ferguson?
Alex Ferguson. But, maybe there is an Alice. Alice, I'm sorry.
I'm sure there is.
You get what I mean. I think there's the two things, isn't it? And also, having worked in recruitment, doesn't always work bringing in brand talent from other companies, especially if they're further in their career. You know, if someone's been at a very different company for a long time, maybe they struggle to change their ways. It's just the reality of life. So you want people that you can build up through the company, as well as also attracting
As well as,
people.
and I think that, you know, that's important. Like our main recruitment strategy is to hire at like part 2 level.
Yeah.
You know, or part 1, but like, you know, when they're part 1s, they have to go away again for a bit. So
Yeah.
it's mostly getting part 2s and training them up within our system. However, you know, we've had like via you a couple of senior hires that it would have been if it's too tempting if everybody's coming through the same mechanism and you don't have that outside voice saying, actually, by the way, we used to do things totally differently. You do need, I think, to hire in senior people who've had a different experience, because otherwise there's a danger of it becoming an echo chamber. You need people to go and come in who, you know, as Fina and Andrew have done, and go, actually, guys, like the way you're doing this is mad. Like there's an easier way to do this that we used to do. And you're like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. You know, because otherwise everyone's only ever drunk the AL Kool-Aid. So I do think it's important to recruit at all levels.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's brilliant. Well, we've done the 10, which is amazing. And while we were talking, we did have a comment that came in. Leonardo says, in Portugal, we charge 10% of our fees ahead. Otherwise, we don't open the laptop. We don't get out of bed. Makes sense.
I'm coming to Portugal. No, so we have always, or not always, from over the past few years, we've built in a 20% deposit into our fees, because we are the same. We want to be able to be essentially invoicing ahead because of the time that it takes to, you know, for payment to be received. We often will have started paying out money for our staff before we've received the money from the client. So we do send out a 20% invoice up front. We don't always wait for that to be paid before we start the work / open the laptop. So I don't know whether Leonardo waits for the 10% to land before he opens his laptop, or whether he just sends out the deposit invoice. He'd have to clarify. But look, we do try to do the same. But you know, it's a competitive market, and it is, you know, it's difficult. If there's lots of reasons why clients aren't able to pay at particular times, and you don't want to miss out because they're waiting on a drawdown, and you're like, nope, I'm simply not working, and they're like, right, great, I'll go and work for, you know, I'll go around the corner and talk to whoever other architect who's willing to do the first month on the promise that it'll be paid next month. It is a challenging balance, and that is how people get in pickles. And that's why I do think, you know, it's hard for me to be the outlier by saying, right, I want to be paid 100% up front, you know, because lots of other people won't, which is why I do think it needs Reba to make an intervention and go, guys, everybody's going to have to do this from now. Because if it's just one person that's trying to make the payment terms difficult, they will potentially just lose market share by being like that.
No, you're right. You're right. Well, Leonardo thinks, yeah, he's acting like the boss.
He does wait. Well,
he waits.
Yeah, lucky
Leonardo. Good for you. We can't wait. We need the money. Thank you, Leonardo. I joke around. I really appreciate you sharing your thoughts there. While we're here, we've done the 10. I wanted to ask you 1 or 2 quick questions. It's 2024. We're hearing all this stuff about AI and stuff. Ollie, what do you think about involving AI in architecture? Is that something that we should embrace now to maybe forego a lesson of, I don't know, not catching up with it? Or at the same time, do you think it's a lot of hype? Do you think it's a waste of time?
I don't think that anybody's going to be able to wait. You're engaging, like, I think AI like metaverse and like surfing the internet are going to be words that stop being used because they'll make you sound like a granddad, because AI is just going to become everywhere. It's, you know, like, it's sort of already sounding a bit old-fashioned to say, are you using AI? We're using AI now, probably. There's some vocal tuning happening on this software, probably.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the same. Like Photoshop, Adobe's already putting AI into InDesign and Illustrator and Photoshop, and that's, you know, we're trying to do lots of stuff around, but with ChatGPT actually for we've made our own kind of chat bot for the London plan. So you can kind of ask it questions, which is quite cool. Be like, right, I've got a 60 unit scheme. How many bins, like 1, 2s and 3s on this ratio, how many bins do I need? And it's quite cool. It works it all out for you. On the visualization front, Bee's doing a lot of stuff that's kind of improving our rendering. We are also engaging with an AI kind of specialist called Alistair Lewis, who's been on my podcast, who's building our kind of tech stack for us so that we're able to integrate different things and automate certain processes. But ultimately, the software companies like Autodesk, they're going to start folding all of this stuff into their software. The main way that architects are going to end up engaging this stuff is involuntarily, because if they subscribe to Revit or ArchiCAD, those larger companies are going to have to start buying the smaller companies that start automating your floor plans or whatever it is they do, automatic setting out, automatic detailing. It's all. I think it's going to happen through the larger players acquiring and then kind of back-ending it into their existing softwares. So, you just got to kind of look at where does the capital lie? Is it going to be architects who are driving this transition? Probably not, because we don't have a huge amount of venture capital lying around for us to personally invest in building these softwares. So then you have to go, well, who's going to be doing it? Well, actually, potentially developers and house builders might start developing their own AI softwares that start to reduce the role that's required from the architect. And we are seeing that already. And then also the tech companies, the Autodesks, I can't remember who makes ArchiCAD now. Graphisoft, that's our software. Graphisoft. Yeah. I'll have to shout out Graphisoft actually, because they were amazing with the AL Academy. They gave us 2 licenses per year to use with our students. So wow. Big thanks to them. That was really great. But anyway, those companies, they do have capital to invest in the next software, either by buying companies up that have developed AI and then folding it into their softwares, or by generating their own technology, because they are technology companies. So those are the people that are going to make the shift. And then architects, we're quite placid in what happens, because we're just there, scrabbling around to pay our monthly license fees for these pieces of software. We don't have spare capital to build our own software, really. Yeah. Although we are doing a little bit of coding because B knows how to do it. But and there are actually R&D tax opportunities to get tax rebates for coding that you are doing, but you actually have to be writing the code, not just like using ChatGPT. No. So that was a very long answer to that question. Sorry about that.
I like it. No, it's a good one, and I appreciate you sharing it. David Williams says, "Is this being recorded? I missed a couple of points." Yes, it is. You can watch the replay afterwards. You can catch them, but we have got Ollie for a few more minutes. So if you have a quick question, David, you can ask him it. Now, Andrea says, he gets a mobilisation at the front. Help me vet the affordability of a client. Minimum 1K. Well, there you go. So that's what Andrea does as well. So we're getting all these suggestions. Now, the last question that I was going to ask you, Oliver, before maybe you ask me a question, I want you to give me a zinger live. You're gonna, because I know you'll throw a juggler. You won't go slow. But I was going to say, what are you excited for in 2024? What are you excited for this year?
I'm excited for the same thing that everyone in the property industry is excited about, and that is interest rates.
Rates, come on. Why are you keeping going? I know, it made me laugh that they were like, last year it was a bit of a recession. And I'm like, you don't say.
Yeah, I know. That was one of those things where you're like, oh, yeah, I know. God, you feel it. And then somebody says, that was a recession. You're like, of course it was. Of course it was.
Really? Oh, I thought this was normal. We're supposed to suffer. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the interest rate moving is going to be a big relief for the industry. Has that been a knock-on effect for you then? Have you felt it, Oliver, in the last year or two, all jokes aside?
So when Russia invaded Ukraine, I said to you, this is going to have a massive impact. Well, that's why interest rates went up. Interest rates went up because there was an inflation that was caused, or allegedly, by that war, but actually was much more to do with the amount of money that had been pumped into the economy during COVID. But whatever, the oil price rises that happened caused inflation that meant that interest rates had to be put up. So I was right about what I said, and we're still recovering from that. I hate being right about stuff like that, but
Yeah.
that's 2 years worth of basically negative growth or zero growth caused by that moment. So I don't know. I'm hoping that I think an election will help. I think that there will be renewed confidence by the end of the year that we have a government. Maybe we have the same government, but I don't think we probably will. I think we'll have a different one, and that might give some more confidence to people. I think there's a lack of competence in the current government in the housing, in the levelling up, whatever they called it, whatever used to be MHGLC, and that's adding to the sense of kind of hopelessness / inertia. I feel like every time Michael Gove opens his mouth, it sends tremors through the industry. His ad hoc changing of the definition of when you need a second staircase, which we still have not seen the policy around. He just mentioned that it's going to go from 30 to 18. That was, I think, over 6 months ago that he said that. We're still yet to see the policy. Not being able to see the detail around this stuff. Things are being announced. It's like decree by press release rather than by policy. For us, it's really important to see policy. And I think there's a sense in the industry that this government hasn't got its head in the detail, and often is issuing policy that is quite hard to make work with the existing constraints that are already there. So, for example, biodiversity net gain, the stuff around nitrates, which was kind of U-turned twice. So hopefully an election will help, in terms of restoring a sense of credibility, plus economic growth happening if interest rates go down. Those two things will hopefully be positive for the industry. But I do think, that there needs to be, or there is a renewed focus on ESG, which I think is helpful for architects. It's becoming, the sustainable credentials of a building are becoming less of an afterthought and more of a from first principles, particularly in the commercial sector. I think the residential sector has a lot, has more slack to pick up. So those are things that make me hopeful.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I'm hopeful too. Andrea says, I'm glad you said that. Zero growth or negative growth. It looked like I was the only one suffering last year. I felt that way. Don't worry, Andrea. We were all in pain. Mega pain. But I'm
come on. We lost some good, like PH Plus went bust. A lot of contractors went bust. A lot of good companies went bust last year. So if you made it through, you're doing all right.
We're here. We keep on going. You've done this for 10 years. I don't know how you've done it. I've done 1.5. 1.5. It feels like dog years. Maybe it's
my turn to ask you a question.
Yeah, it's not all about me, but ask me the questions. Come on,
ask you the question. Okay, so what's been so you were working for somebody else, then for quite a long time you were like a one-man band, then you hired a person, and that doesn't quite count. Now you've got a team. Yes. What has been the hardest thing or the most unexpected thing about having a team?
It's hard, full stop. I mean, I find it hard now. I mean, learning as you're going. So I have my own advisor, you mentioned, and that's partly because I remember you've been very vocal that actually having a non-executive advisor was good. So that's the first thing I've done. And that's been great because I think sometimes you're wandering in the desert. Yourself, you have Oliver. Oliver,
I'm Oliver. Hello.
Yeah. You have John. And sometimes I've had a business partnership before that you can butt heads, but usually at the same time something's good come out of it. I'm on my own, so I think that's been really useful. I'm still quite learning. The other thing is, like you said before, different personalities on the team. Sometimes you agree, sometimes you disagree. I'm trying to get the balance between because really the buck stops with you, right? And there's a lot of power that comes with that and a lot of responsibility. It's just trying to get the balance there and sometimes knowing when to listen, but sometimes knowing actually what you need to do. So I'm still trying to work it out. It goes I think having 2 people is one thing, 3, but when you go past 3 and it becomes like a group, a team, it's very, very, very different. And also the thing that I've learned is that you have more people, overheads go up, more responsibilities go up. And then I remember when I was with you, I was like, oh, we're a family. And it's like, you're like, well, actually, it's a team. And at the time, I looked at it differently because I was like, oh, family's quite soft. But in reality, it is a team. And the reality is, in a brutal commercial world, if someone's not performing on the team, it can pull everyone down. And then how you deal with that is very, very important as well. You mentioned earlier before, hire fast, fire fast. Okay, it's a brash sentence, but I get the gist. You know, you have to make these decisions. You can't be rendered. So you can't stop. You've got to make tough calls. You got to think about what to do. And I think that's been a bit of a shock for me as well, getting there. But it's hard. And also, the last thing I say on it is that, again, you know, in the business at the start, the first few hires, you're bestie mates, you're going to conquer the world, all that stuff. But then when real life and the gruel kicks in, what you realize is that, of course, you want to have a fantastic place for everyone to be, but it's tough. It's business. You have to make these decisions as well. So the fairy tale romanticism goes slightly. So I'm just trying to work out the balance. I'm just trying to keep going. But that's how I feel. Does any of that resonate with the first few years of what you were doing for my sanity? Does that make sense?
100%. And I think, you know, it really shifts. There's like, it's very unlikely that the people that you hire, and sorry if they're listening, but it's very unlikely if the first people you hire end up being the people that you're working with 10 years later.
Right.
And that's because the people that take a bit of a punt on going to work for the guy who's just started his own business, where you're the first or second hire, are probably 10 years later going to either be running their own thing, because that's kind of what they were about, or they're not going to fit in with the company culture that you have when you have 15 people, because, you know, they've been there from the start. Are they you? Are they a co-founder? No. Are they like, you know, so, and they're just, they by the time you're a 15-person company, the people that you're hiring will have totally different experiences, behaviors, and won't work very well with the type of people that would work at a startup, you know? So you get this gradual shift of people. And, you know, we don't have a single person left over from when we made our first round of hiring, you know, 10 years ago. And I think that would always be the case. You will get different people that are attracted to you, and they will get, you know, as soon as you start to grow to the next phase, the people that are loving it now because it's a bit seat of your pants won't like it because it starts to become more stable.
Policy, procedures, and it's like, whoa, this is all changed.
And they just won't enjoy it. And it's like whether you enjoy it, you know, because for us, I think you know, I loved it back in the day but I was like in my early 30s, and I loved, you know, startup phase was awesome. But now I'm 40, I probably wouldn't want to do it again, you know. But I loved it back then, so that's cool. But like, you know, would I go and work for a startup? Maybe. Would I go and work for a 25-person architecture practice? Only if I could go in as a director. Do you know what I mean? So like it's sort of, you get different people at different phases of the company's existence. But everything you said is true. And
I'm still working it out. I'm in the middle of it. I don't have a conclusive, and you know, it's work in progress, and I make a lot of mistakes all the time. Before we go, last thing, do you want to ask one more question to me? Maybe less about the social, maybe more about the architectural recruitment or anything, or my views and that kind of stuff.
About your views about architecture. Okay, yeah. So how are you saying? How are you seeing the market? So you said in COVID there were lots of people looking for jobs, and now there aren't. The economic data around architecture, it does suggest there's like quite a lot of people are employed, but like the wages aren't going up.
Yeah, let me put clarity on what I meant. There, people are looking, but they're in jobs. They're being fussy. You know, it's about the next move, something substantial. And I think that there's also a shift there right now where some people go like, oh, I will leave where I am for 10, 12K more. And actually that bubble that, you know, when there was a mega skill shortage, business owners were making that difficult decision of overpaying salaries, which kind of skewed the market. That's all calmed down now. So I think that there's unrealistic expectations of people thinking what they're worth. And when I say that, I don't mean they're not good. I mean what the market will pay versus what they're looking for. So right now it's kind of a bit janky. But I do think other sectors have been screwed over. You mentioned about Michael Gove and the
Gove,
you know, this old
Oh, Gav.
Second stairwell guy. That whole comment just screwed over residential.
Yeah, I know.
We just don't get any clients in that area. So like our most busy clients right now are like in the Red Sea doing the line or whatever. And it's like, hey, if you're prepared to go to the desert, we'll pay you. And so it's interesting, that shift. And so we're seeing as well, for example, data centers is a very strong market. It just keeps going bigger because everyone's on their phones. All these companies are collecting data. And so they've kind of used to be a bit more like a shed in a field, and it was more about getting the power there and stuff. But actually they're becoming places of work. So it's blowing with commercial. So data centers, very strong. Overseas kind of luxury islands in different kind of worlds, amazingly strong. But again,
well, so this is the thing about like the REBA proudly said, revenue in architects has gone up since 2022 or something like that.
Yeah, but UK
but the
projects?
data, it was totally skewed. Yeah, it was the largest 30 companies were contributing an enormous amount to that revenue growth. And they were saying that half of their money was coming from, as you say, the Middle East or America. So if you're a small business and you're not accessing this funding that's outside of the UK, then it's exactly the opposite. Like revenue is down significantly, but REBA are blindfolded to it and, willingly not looking at the issue that is affecting small businesses, which is wage deflation and poor payment terms. Yeah. And, it will filter through because we employ lots of people and we employ lots of, not just our direct staff, but people like yourself, recruiters, there's a whole supply chain around us. Everybody's suffering from these two issues. And I wish that there was a more unionized representative that was willing to actually do something about it.
Yeah, no, well said. And I think the last point before we go, and because you kindly introduced me to the Financial Times, Mr. Connections over here. Thank you so much. But the topic of that was about skilled worker visas going up from like 20k or whatever it is now to 38k. That's going to cause huge problems because, like we talked about in there, we have all these amazing people. We're lucky to come to the UK to work on all these projects, and it really adds, I think, a net positive to architecture. They're not. However, the salaries are not all there yet. A part two is very unlikely to be getting 38k unless they've been, I don't know, part two for donkey's years. And even an architect there is touch and go. It's all about experience. And then if it's your first job in the UK, then you kind of got to prove yourself here. You got to learn all the regs. You got to do all that stuff. So I think that's going to cut people out. Bizarrely, could be great for recruitment if I'm putting that hat on, because I've got suddenly when you close off the pool, it's all about finding people in the pool. But it's going to be terrible for the architecture industry because all these good talented people won't be able to work here anymore. That's my thoughts. But how do you feel about it, Oliver?
Well, I feel the same as you, but in a sort of macro way. At the moment, one of the few export things where Britain has a really, really great international reputation and we export it is design services. Probably, financial services as well and law, but like that's not my world. So, but like we are, as you say, well regarded in the world, and we export a lot of these design services around the world and charge a lot of money for it. But in return, what we require is the most talented students and pupils and whatever, like young candidates, young employees, young architects, to want to come to the UK or or to London to work for these businesses. If you get rid of that by arbitrarily saying, no, you can't have your first job here, you realistically 38 grand, you're not going to get your first job in London. And who's going to want to spend 38 grand on an architect that's not been tested on any UK projects? They're going to have to be very, very, very good. So you're just disrupting an ecosystem that already works quite well. Okay, it doesn't work for everyone, but for the biggest companies, it works pretty well. If you take away it just seems an unnecessary thing. But, as I said to the journalist who interviewed me as well, it's just politics. It's trying as much as possible to create a culture war item around something that doesn't need to be anywhere near this culture war topic of immigration. You're seeing it with housing as well. So Michael Gove, as you've now called him, but it used to be called Michael Gove, saying social housing for Britons first. So affordable housing will be provided to British people before others. You're taking housing and you're like politicizing it into this anti or pro immigration thing. You're making it part of this culture wars conversation. It doesn't need to be there, and nor does this immigration change to skilled workers will make such a negligible change to the net migration figures. It's really not the thing that's going to solve the problem, but it will have a damaging impact on lots of industries, architecture included.
Yeah, no, really, really well said. It's well, and the only one last thing I'd say on what you said is you mentioned an architect's salary in the UK will struggle to get that. Well, in London, we'll struggle to get that. Well, what about the rest of the UK? We know London pays the highest salaries, probably. So it's just not gonna work. But thank you for sharing that. I'll do the last quick rundown of what everyone said, because I have to let you go back to your business in a second. But Leo says, wish you a great year ahead. Mr. and Mrs. Anonymous says, great session, guys. Leo asked, did Brexit have any impact on the hiring process in Europe? I'll say yes, but we will go into that at a more time. And David Williams says, Mr. Lowrie should seriously consider Reba membership and a presidential campaign. Well, thank you, David, for that very original idea. And I'm going to hold Oliver to that in the future as well. But thank you as well for everyone in the audience for participating, because it really makes a big difference. Oliver, just before you go, the last thing, where can people find you? Where can they find about Ackroyd Lowrie if they want to get in touch and learn about all the work that you do?
Well, that is our website, but I would go to LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. I like chatting away on LinkedIn. Message me, connect with me, comment on the things that I post. LinkedIn's the place to go. It's the only social. I said, so one of these people that we had from our academy, who was like 17, I was like, blah, 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 LinkedIn. And they were like, LinkedIn. I was like, it's the second largest, fastest growing social media in the world, actually. And they were like, all right, Grandpa. If you're not on TikTok, you're nowhere. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not on TikTok.
Nah, me neither. I've done 1 or 2 reels lately. It's not for me. I'll try my best.
Well, you're looking good,
LinkedIn,
mate. You've lost the stone.
Oh,
so you're
I'll
looking
keep
great.
going. I'm going to keep going. By the time the interest rate is down, let's see what my weight is. So let's see.
You're deflating like interest rates.
That would be good. That would be good. If it goes up again now and I go up, then we're in a world of pain. We're in the world of pain. Thank you so much, Oliver, for being here.
Thank you so much, Stephen.
I really appreciate it. And for you in the audience, thank you so much. I'm going to end the live stream now. Have a fantastic day. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.